It's a festival brought to you by Rajnigandha. Yeah, thank you. After that customary applause, this is the British Airways Baitak. Before we begin today's session, I'd like to do the customary thing of thanking all our sponsors and welcoming you all. A few basic instructions that will go around the show. Right, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Incredible India, Google, British Airways here, Mahindra Humanities Center, and Ford. We have a book partner in Amazon, we have a beverage partner in Coca-Cola. Thank you very much for not keeping us thirsty. Public diplomacy, tourism partner, Rajasthan Tourism, university partner, Amity University. We also have UN Women, Glenlivet, for giving us the happy times. Data partner, MTS, the Patrika Group as media partners, Hindustan Times, DNA, Dainik Bhaskar, and Radio Mirchi 98.3 FM. Thank you very much. We also have Ambit, Arts and Culture, Government of Meghalaya, the Aga Khan Foundation, the Jan Michalski, the Jan Michalski Group and Foundation, of course, the IQ, Penguin Random House, YPO, WPO. Venue partner, our very own Diggy Palace, giving us a place to stay in actually and eat free food. Thank you so much. Hospitality partner for the inaugural dinner was the Rambagh Palace. Hospitality partner for the Writers' Ball, Le Meridian. Music stage partner, Clark's Amer. Healthcare partner, Fortis. And if any of you have a heart attack or mildly faint or something, there you go at the front entrance, Fortis. Everything is available, don't worry. Ticketing partner, Kyazunga. Decor partner, Royal Treasure. And of course, Kingfisher. Hospitality partners, ITP Hotel. And the Oberoi, Raj Vilas. That's a long list. But, well, when it's a big festival, the list is normally long because we have, well, lots of investments to do. Anyhow, a few key announcements that you should be aware of, right? First of all, keep the aisles clean, empty, basically. In fact, today we've increased the space at the aisles so that people can actually walk in, walk out smoothly. There's no problem at all. That's the first thing. Keep the aisles very, very clean and empty as much as possible. Secondly, cleanliness reminds me, please keep the venue clean, no matter where you go. This is somebody's house, and we request you to treat it like somebody's house, as well you do, and even your own house for that matter. Please keep it clean. It's an earnest request from our side. No flash photography is permitted, so in case you want to click photographs, no flash allowed. Yeah, in case you're a media buff and social media buff, please use the hashtag ZJLF or @ZJaipurLitFest. In case of an emergency, please use the nearest exit. There's one here, there's one there. In fact, there's two, and one at the back, of course. Most importantly, this is a no smoking zone, so you really, really can't smoke here. If you have to smoke, please find your way to the smoking zones. They're available in restaurants here and there. You can go and find out, ask the volunteers. They'll be happy to guide you. So, I will repeat those announcements in Hindi also, because it's very important. कुर्सियों के बीच की जगह को खाली छोड़ें, क्योंकि किसी भी आपातकालीन स्थिति में आपके ऊपर से ऑक्सीजन मास्क नहीं गिरेंगे। ये ब्रिटिश एयरवेज है, इसका मतलब ये नहीं कि ये विमान है, ये एक वेन्यू है जहां पर एक सेशन होने वाला है, एक चर्चा होने वाली है। दूसरी बात, यहाँ धूम्रपान निषेध है, वर्जित है। धूम्रपान करने के लिए धूम्रपान क्षेत्र में जाएं और हमारे वॉलंटियर्स आपका सहारा करेंगे। धीरज रखें, संयम रखें। किसी भी आपातकालीन स्थिति में भागना हो भागें, पर अपने सबसे पास वाले दरवाजे से। So that's about it, ladies and gentlemen. For the first session of the British Airways Baitak, we have a revolution in brewing with Sangeeta Bandyopadhyay, C. Mrinalini, Sukrita Paul Kumar in conversation with Manashri Lal, presented to you by Women Interrupted, UN Women. Without further ado, I'm really sorry to take your time. I welcome you all to stage.
Inequality of opportunity that is present is probably one of the most harmful things in our society, and I think as a woman, that is probably the hardest thing to get over.
This is why we have to do this from our point of view, from our perspective. If we don't change it, the attitude, then it's never going to change.
Understand that it's not always speaking out for women, but with alongside women, because we don't want to reinforce that dominance. I'm a he for she because I have an awareness. I can't let my daughters or my wife suffer because I didn't do my job. It starts with me.
Really put yourself in somebody's shoes and say,
was my mother, if this was my sister, if this was my daughter, would I like the way she's being treated? Am I setting the right example for other young men?
Having the discussion about this topic, like that's something that we bring back, like to our neighborhoods, to our communities, to our families, because women are by right like pillars of our community. Like there are no men of women.
A he for she for every single survivor that I've ever met, so that they can have even the slightest hope that, you know, a world where these conversations are not needed is, you know, attainable.
I am a he for she.
I am a he for she.
I am a he for she.
We are he for she.
Good morning, everyone. It's indeed a very great pleasure to welcome you to this session, which is called A Revolution in Making. Should I just say that? It's brewing, it's making. There are many things happening with women in India and beyond. And the title itself is an indication of what we mean to do during the next 1 hour or so. The write-up will tell you that we're looking at it as a silent revolution, deep, effective, and all-pervading. If you look at the statistics regarding women in India today, there are many indicators that show us that things are improving. For instance, the women's literacy rate at the school level has certainly gone up. The women's literacy rate for adult learning hasn't. On the other hand, the number of students who are coming into higher education in a university such as mine, which is the University of Delhi, has gone up enormously. And this silent revolution, we're each witnessing in the lives that we lead and the societies in which we live. At the university where I am, which is one of the largest in the country, the number of women is much more than 50%, even in the science departments. And this was not so even 5 years ago. So somewhere there is a groundswell that women matter, that women will be heard, women will write, women will speak about social change, and that women will be the agents of this enormous change, this revolution that is bringing about a gender equality in the country, and certainly expects that social norms and government policy is going to ensure equity and justice. So welcome here to a session which has 3 wonderful writers with me here on the stage. To my right is Dr. Sukrita Paul Kumar. She is an extremely well-known poet, writes in English, and has been extensively translated into other languages, including Urdu, Italian, and other European translations are in the making. Sukrita has been writing for at least 30 years and has a very large number of collections, 20 and more, and she has a wide range of interests that she expresses. Some of my favorite poems from Sukrita are about the homeless and the marginalized people, women in them, and also her deep sensitivity about the problems of migrating from one country to another. Sukrita herself was born in Kenya and then moved to India and has always had that imaginative outreach for Africa and its people and the indigenous people in particular. On my left is Bandyopadhyay, and what we know about her, about Sangeeta Bandyopadhyay, is that she is an extremely well-known and somewhat controversial writer out of Bengal, Calcutta. And I hope she enjoys being called controversial, because unless one has something provocative to say, women's writing is often left unheard. Sangeeta wrote a novel by the name of Sankini some years ago, which was extremely jolting for many of the Bhadralok, Bhadramahila readers in Bengal, I'm told. The English translations that are available, and I had the pleasure of reading several of them, were of a novella called Hypnosis, a novella called Panty, and a short novel called Abandon. The translator is also here with us, Arunav Sinha, extremely strong, good translation. So when you read the novels, yes, you know there's a Bangla history and sociology behind it, but the novels are just so smoothly written, they're a pleasure to read, Sangeeta. Why does her book bring about this kind of a shock? Because she's talking about subjects that have remained under the cover of so-called middle-class morality and unmentionable subjects. She's talking about female desire, she's talking about sexuality, and she's talking about abandon. And abandon in many senses of the word, abandon in the sense of loneliness, abandon in the sense of being abandoned by conventional society. So thank you for joining us, Sangeeta. And then to my far left is Mrinalini, who writes in Telugu. Again, a very strong writer, very well known, and her forte is actually prose writing and criticism. Among her many areas of address, she's looking at comparative feminism and does not at all balk at the idea of being called a feminist. She has been doing comparisons between Greek mythology and Indian mythology, and particularly looking at the figures within mythology who are protesting society. So Antigone out of Greek mythology, Draupadi and Shakuntala out of Hindu mythology. So here are my three wonderful co-panelists, and it is a delight to have all of you here. I will address each of them briefly and allow the time that is with all of us to be used productively by listening to their views and listening to their works. So may I first turn to Sukrita, whose work I have known for a very long time. Sukrita, you have some very sensitive poems, as I said, about marginalized people. What makes you attracted to the marginalized people? And then would you like to give us some example from your work?
Immediately, my thought goes to the whole idea of questioning the term marginalized. Who are the people who are saying this is marginalized and that is marginalized? I think that has created a lot of problem, and the artist has to intervene therefore somewhere through putting all the sensitivity together in order to see how the marginalized is actually mainstream. It just depends on what the self-perception is, and somewhere I think it's problematic. When I was in Africa and in Kenya, and I remember being brought up on the writings of Ngugi wa Thiong'o, and I want to really kind of pay a tribute to his writing, who kind of in one sense, sensitized me to the whole idea of what is being a Kikuyu. And I'm talking I'm ancient, and I started writing about 30 years ago or more, in fact more. And I remember, I was there in Kenya as a child, where at that time Kenya was also a colony, and British colony. And Kikuyu the term was like, our parents, our community used to say, okay, don't misbehave, otherwise I'll call a Kikuyu, I'll call a Maasai. So it was an image of terror, not really marginalized in one sense, but a stereotype created out of the black terror, the black as the terrorist, the black as intervening. I mean, it's really ridiculous. So I remember my father, who is a writer, reacting to that and writing in Urdu stories which were actually center staging the Kikuyu, center staging the Maasai. So somewhere I think I have that lineage, not looking at the so-called marginalized as marginalized, but really bringing them out and making them more visible, and in that also sharing another perspective that after all even women were marginalized for a long time, which is half the population if not more, in some societies even more than half. And we were, absent, totally absent from the discourses in knowledge, and because knowledge meant written knowledge. So you go to the oral domain and you will have a lot of women's voices there, but there too, kind of marginalized in one sense. So I aligned myself to that very easily, and not thinking about or questioning the idea of the marginalized. Right? So you want me to give
Why don't you give us a poem on the subject?
Okay, so let me read out a poem. It's difficult to often decide which one, but I'll read this out very quickly because it's a little longer than my usual poems. And this is about a Ghumantu, the nomad. And I again, in my spirit, I am a Ghumantu myself, right? So I aligned to this whole concept. What am I to her and she to me? That's the title. 7 moons away is when I met her, on a travel away from home, half my height, in size less than half, hollow eyes etched on craggy cheeks, the white leaping out of dark crevices, a dwarf clad in rags, wrapped in half a sari. Alone amidst children of sizes all, men and women tired of it all, her wrinkles trembled as she said, "We are Ghumantu, made criminals by history, brought together in this slum to fend for ourselves with these fingers that are alum. I hear you are from Delhi, the city of power. Get me shelter, get me food, clothes. My blessings you will earn. Yours and mine, our ancestors, as you might know, are the same. Above clan, caste, class, each moonlit night, they connect me with you. Her body a sight of shadows, of wounds suffered in the past, her soul reflecting loud injuries, she a bundle of bones, knuckles and crooked joints, twisting and turning, she wriggles close. My fleshy hands reaching for money in the chaos of my bag, to put on her craggy palms extended for an embrace. What am I to her and she to me, that we remain bound in that embrace? What has woven those threads between us? Do our ancestors awaken each full moon to connect us? She calls me and I rise to walk tiptoe on the rays of light, to embrace her, to embrace her.
Thank you, Sukrita. That's a very beautiful rendering of the idea of being a Ghumantu and a permanent nomad. I've had a lot of good fortune in knowing a lot of poets, and particularly the women poets. Here is a tiny book that Sukrita gifted to me. It's called Dreamcatcher. It's a book about creativity, and it accompanies another big book which is also called Dreamcatcher. But I want to read the first line from this book to make the transition from Sukrita to Sangeeta Bandyopadhyay, because I think it reflects a dilemma that all of us have when we are confronted with what to write and how to write. This little chapter is called Other. I think suggesting that the other is that page in front, and somewhere we've got to integrate with it. The blank sheet stares back at me in defiance each time I sit to write a poem. My eyes are dazzled with the white of the sheet, and I remain in a stupor, wondering when, if any, words will flow from the fingers waiting on the keyboard. So may I now turn to Sangeeta Bandyopadhyay. Do you have the same kind of anxiety when you sit down to write a novel? And yet, reading your work, such as this one, called Panty, it gives the impression of a very confident writer who knows exactly where to begin, where to control the story, and where to move it forward. The title itself is very engaging, and I hope you will say something about it, why it was so shocking to your readers, and how confidently do you write these controversial novels?
I have been several times, almost all the times, I have been asked that where do you get the courage from to write all whatever you write. But then I say that it's not about the courage. I don't feel any extra courage to write all this. It's about what I have to write. what have come inside my mind, what I have felt to write. So it's like when I write, there is no readers in front of me. I'm writing what I believe in, actually. So it will be good if I read something from my, novel to, it will be more direct to, communicate with the audience here. Actually, what I write, you might understand more clearly. It's from the novel Hypnosis. On a shearing summer afternoon, 4 sex-starved women sat together, knees touching, discussing their sex lives in introspective mood in Ilona Kuho Mitra's air-conditioned room. Ilona Kuho Mitra was one of them, of course. The others were Laila, Chunetra, and Lavanya. All 3 were Ilona's friends. They had never had a confessional discussion with so many candid admissions before. Each woman was largely aware of the other's relationships and sexual experiences. But on that day, they seemed tossed about on the stormy seas of their respective stories like dinghies that had broken free of their moorings. They had given precedence to self-respect throughout their long and deep friendship, but that day they abandoned any sense of embarrassment to describe their secret failures, humiliations, scenes, and tyrannies, bringing each of these to life with laughter, tears, nudges, and winks, all the while gulping beer directly from the bottle and using foul, profane language. The women performed suggestive dances for one another, clapping like hijras, and made orgasmic noises as they tumbled on the bed with their eyes shut. The whole thing began with Sunetra saying, women's sex drive peaks around 35. I no longer care to have my hand held or kissed. All I can think of is hold me, carve me, draw blood. And now of all times, I have no one to have sex with. I wish I would die. A college professor, Shunetra, had been diagnosed with breast cancer a few months ago. Still in its first stage, it was being treated. She bled at times from the urinary tract without any apparent cause. Sometimes she was racked by pain, but still, Ilona Kuhumitra and her friends had never heard Shunetra wish for death. That afternoon they did. Shunetra's eyes filled with tears as she spoke. I had sex on the sly at 14 with a guy from the neighborhood. My first taste. I have always considered myself a bad girl since then. My drive is too strong. I jump into bed as soon as I am in love. But I wonder now how sleeping with more than one man amount to having a great sex life. All I have experienced during such random and irregular promiscuity is the urge. How much pleasure did I actually get? I didn't even last 2 years with Orindam. Shilajit also went off to Bombay. In my 20-year-long sex life, the number of days I have actually had sex can be counted on the fingers of my hands. Orindam was Shunetra's husband. They had been married more than 10 years. Shunetra even had a son, and she had only had a short-lived affair with Shilajit. Once the barriers came down, each woman began to tell her own story without hesitation. Ilona Kuhumitra revealed that she had been masturbating since the age of 4, but no one believed her. Don't exaggerate, Ilona, said Laila. 4? Are you kidding me? I'm going out for a smoke, said Ilona. I will come back and give you the details. No way, you are not going anywhere. Tell us now. I have always known that sex has nothing to do with the heart. What starts with the body ends with the body. That's why I don't believe in all these clearly defined identities like homosexual or bisexual. Anything and anybody can give you that pleasure. Our pleasure orientation is concentrated in such a small area, a hole or a penis around which there are few nerves capable of receiving the pleasure stimulus. The rest is imagination. I really was 4 then. I was rocking in my chair one day. The legs rose and fell and there was a thump each time. My mother shouted from the kitchen, "Don't do that, Kuhu. You will fall and hurt your head." I wasn't listening. I was being disobedient. Suddenly I had a very good feeling down there. It felt wonderful. I didn't know that I was having spasms, long spasms. I did it because I enjoyed the sensation. The whole experience stayed with me. I did it whenever I remembered. Even in school, I was doing it in school one day, rocking, and we had this teacher, she slapped me. Didn't I tell you not to make noise? My mother slapped me too one day. After that, I obviously couldn't do the rocking thing in other people's presence. What now? I was addicted. I was so innocent. I discovered that I could get the same pleasure if I lay down, crossed my legs, and rubbed one against the other. It didn't make any noise. I did it in full view of my mother one day. "What are you doing?" she asked. "It feels good here." I told her. She collapsed. And then came the scolding, the spanking. So I started hiding it, and by the time I was 7 or 8, I had developed a complete method of masturbation in my own style. And by the time I was 12, I was inserting things into myself. I think this much too much.
Certainly a passage which illustrates the courage with which you are writing, publishing, and also the receptivity of the readers who are buying your books and who are appreciative of the fact that you have broken loose from the conventions of writing that are associated with women. Which brings me to the thought that women's writing over the years has changed so tremendously. And there was an earlier generation which expected that women will only write about domestic matters and about family and about children and about in-laws and the kind of thing that often goes into soap operas at 7 o'clock in the evening, which is domestic relations and community relations only in terms of ritual performances. But here we have a group of writers on the stage, and there are others out there that we know of who are bringing about this revolution in what is to be expected of women's writing. And the subject is endless. Nevertheless, I do want to suggest that women approach society differently. They write about social problems, they write about world politics. There's not a subject that today's women writers do not touch, but they do it differently. I wonder if, Mrinalini, you would agree, because your writing is extremely strong, and you're, as a critic and an academic, you're aware of the changes that are taking place in women's writing across the country, and you have an overview of the kind of revolutionary thinking and writing that is going on. But in order to come to my questions to you, I want to quote a little line from Sangeeta Bandhopadhyay's work. This is a novel called Abandon, and the opening pages are very, very strong. There's something here which might help me to make the transition from Sangeeta Bandhopadhyay's work to Mrinalini's. This is a character, a mother with a sickly child, who is driving around in a taxi late at night in Kolkata, trying to find a shelter where she can stay for the night. A malevolent, repressive, unpalatable novel. It begins to answer the question, what is the meaning of life? But by the time it ends, a virtual human being with transformed proclivities will have to admit that life is constantly being a murderer. Life is constantly being a murderer. So Mrinalini, Do you think you have that vision of life, the way it treats women, life as a murderer, or do you think women have a different kind of a relationship with life around them?
Thank you for that question. Thanks. I've been very fortunate to listen to two original creative writers, because I am not a creative writer, though I've written short stories. I am basically a critic. And if I go back to the question, she has asked about what's happening and is life
a murderer?
Life a murderer? I don't think so at all. We should be, I think I have a more positive vision of life as a woman. And as far as the thing that what has changed in the way women have been writing, I represent a particular South Indian language, Telugu, but I do have an idea of what's happening all over India regarding women writing. It was, in fact, the title of this program was "The Revolution is Brewing." Yeah, I don't think it's brewing now. It started brewing 20 years ago. It's gone and passed. It's now settled, absolutely settled. And now women who had started actually writing the body, who had initially started writing the body, especially in Telugu literature, they've gone past that. They no longer write the body. If they do, they did it 5, 6, 10 years back. And now creative writing in Telugu has gone slightly beyond that. And now they write about the current issues, whether it's the farmers' plight or globalization, what different things, the changes in the politics, how all these affect women. So there is now a more holistic approach towards life and the way life is dealing with women, and everything has a female point of view. I personally believe that any issue, every issue has a female point of view, whether it is the current thing, both especially in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, where I come from, the current issue is the farmer suicides. And can you imagine a woman writing about a farmer suicide? Earlier it was not thought possible because it was not his arena. It were the men, the Marxists, who were writing about farmer suicides. But now you see that women are writing about farmer suicide, and what is their angle? Somebody yesterday was saying that there is no such thing as a female voice or a female angle, writers are writers. No, I think women have a voice. They have a specific voice, and these women who write about farmer suicides are writing about the farmers wives of the farmers who committed suicide. You see, there is a different approach to problems when they are writing. A farmer who is totally impoverished, he has no hope, and it's the effect of all this globalization and this market economy where agriculture is suffering in India, and that is the offshoot. The farmer is losing his land, losing everything of his life itself, and he takes an easy way out by committing suicide. And everybody writes about the farmer who commits suicide. That is what all the male writers are writing about. That is their story. But the women writer writes about the wife who remains to face the world. She has to rear the 4 children or the whole family, and she has to fend for it, where the man has taken an easy way out. So this is where I say the female point of view enters. And this is the courage. All the women writers in Telugu, especially in the language I represent, write about the courage of the women to face life. They no longer feel they are burdened. They no longer think that life is burdening them or life is murdering them. They feel that they have the courage to face up to anything, not only that, to even supersede all the constraints they used to have. Earlier, women used to have some sort of, they were feeling shy, but now they no longer have any inhibitions. As you can very well see, Sangeeta has written a brilliant story. I mean, I didn't expect this. I didn't read such a story in Telugu at all. So not being uninhibited in their approach, in their expression, that is one major change I think that has come out in all languages, in Indian languages, that they are no longer inhibited. And the another thing is, there are no such things as women subjects now. Earlier they used to think women write about family, women have a certain subject, women write about themselves, women are more subjective than objective. These are the general way of approaching women. I think it's all over the world, if you ask me. But now women write about everything and anything, but they give a female perspective. The crux of the situation is giving your perspective, which may be different from what the man gives. So that is where I think the strength of women writing lies right now.
Thanks for a very strong statement in favor of the change in subject matter for women's writing. Your work, Nishabda Viplavalu, Silent Revolution, this has been gathering a lot of attention, Mrinalini. If you have a copy, would you read a little section from that?
The problem with critics is that they can't read from the texts. If I was a poet or a short story writer or a fiction writer like any of them, in fact, I should have brought my stories, which I didn't. They were feminist satires on men. I didn't bring their book anyway. So it's not easy for me to write. I just want to say what I found in common in the Greek and Indian mythology. Most of you, I think half of you know Greek mythology, half of you know Indian mythology, most of you may know both of them. So it's actually a long-term project of mine to compare these two mythologies, especially from the feminist point of view or the female characters there. But I would just this was just a long essay on that. But I would like to say that wherever women were, whether it was in Western culture or Indian culture, I think women were always had to fight for their rights, whatever it was, and they had to fight with patriarchal hegemony. So that is common in whatever the country is, whatever the culture is. This is what I found even in Greek myths and Indian mythology. For instance, does any Greek hero, consult his wife before doing whatever he's doing? I'll give you an example of Agamemnon going to the Trojan War. He is supposed to talk to Clytemnestra, his wife. He not only does not consult her, he simply sacrifices their daughter Iphigenia. She is killed so that the winds blow favorably for the ships to move. I think you all know the Helen of Troy film, it is the film you know. So, Clytemnestra naturally has a grudge against her husband Agamemnon, who has not even consulted her about killing the child, let alone going to the war, about killing the child. Can anyone tell me if Lakshmana ever asked Urmila whether he can go with Rama? Never. Lakshmana asks, if you go to Valmiki Ramayanam, Lakshmana goes to each and every Brahmin in the family, all the gurus, all the mothers, they have 3 mothers, all the mothers, the father, everybody, he goes to everybody and says, I am going with Rama. He doesn't even remember that he has abandoned his wife, a newlywed wife. He doesn't even consult, he doesn't tell her, let alone consult her. He doesn't even inform her. So the similarity is that husbands don't consider wives at all. You see, what happens is, you have another, I can give you another instant. This is how wives think that husbands' lives are more valuable than their lives. You have Alcestis in the Sophocles play. Alcestis sacrifices herself so that her husband lives on. There is a choice. I mean, the husband, the god of death comes and says, I have to take away your husband. But he says, if there is anybody else who is going to give their lives instead in his place, I am going to let him live. His parents refuse. Their kids refuse to give up their lives. Alcestis, the wife, obviously, it's such an obvious choice. I think F.L. Lucas says that in his book, The Tragedy. It's such an obvious choice that the wife gives up her life so that the husband can live on. If she is not a pativrata, which till Indian is a pativrata, I mean, they don't have this pativrata concept, but that is exactly what she has done. So she gives up her life and the husband lives on, she dies. Enjoy the idea of living. She doesn't want to wake up and enjoy the life. That is the supreme sacrifice women have been making, and this you can see in many parallel things. In fact, I can give you one more instance. I'll stop with one more thing. Antigone, another Greek mythical character, and Antigone defies the authority, the state. You see, it's very rare. Now, you and I can now talk about defying the state. Sharmila, you know, the great Manipur lady, she has been defying the state since so many years. So we can defy the state at this time, but before Christ, I think 300 BC or so, Antigone defied the state because the king decided that one of her brothers who died in a battle should not be cremated. He doesn't like that brother, so he said that he should not be cremated. Nobody should take his body, it should rot. So Antigone, being the sister, she goes to the king and says, I want to cremate my brother. It's very simple, it's my right. It's my right as a sister to cremate the body of my brother. She's not given that right. There's a big fight. And Antigone defies the king alone because her own sisters, for whom also he's a brother, they all leave her and say that you don't go against the state, don't go against authority. She doesn't buckle. She cremates the body of her brother. You see, it was in BC, you're writing about the rights of a woman to do what she wants to do. So this is the sort of mythical characters that we have in Greek literature. We can draw parallels in Indian literature. Well, you know Shakuntala, you know Draupadi. Shakuntala, when she's talking to Dushyanta, she is not talking about him accepting her or her son. That is not the only thing she's saying. She says, you are supposed to be a king, and the king is supposed to stand for truth, Satya. The whole argument of Shakuntala in Mahabharata is, Why do you deny the truth? It's not a matter of accepting me, taking me as your wife or taking Bharata as your son. That's not the point at all. You are a king and you should set an example for truthfulness, and you are denying the truth. So this is sort of, questioning an authority, questioning a husband who obviously is an authority. So these are the things that I found very, very interesting in both Greek mythology and Indian mythology. And I've been working on this. I've just written one long essay. Preferably, maybe I'll write it in English and bring it to the next Jaipur festival. Thank you.
Thank you. Very, very fascinating there.
Hello, I want to know how a 6-year-old...
Excuse me, who are you addressing the question to, please?
My question to
Sangeeta?
Sangeeta.
To Mrilanili, okay.
No, Sangeeta.
Sangeeta,
Yeah.
right.
I just want to know how a 6-year-old or an 8-year-old would have sexual drive. That's my question. Because I thought usually sexual drive starts after puberty, at least 11 or maybe 12. But I just wanted to know that, that's all.
I don't know if there is actually any. I'm not sure about this fact that there should be any sexual right and there should be any appropriate age for sexual right, and whether it's very, I'm not.
Drive. It's a sexual drive.
Drive, okay. Sexual drive. I think then we have to go back to Freud and, start talking about even pre-birth memories of sexuality. So I don't know, but I'm not sure. But you have to, I believe, personally believe that our experiences are not just when we grow up from the very tender age. It's not like, very limited with only things which are, with, experiences also comes from other fields, and also people start understanding a little bit of sexuality even when they are very, very small. That is what I believe.
If I just want to add to that, because you see, the point that you have raised is significant for us to ponder on. It may not be seen as sexual. There may not be any self-reflexivity about it, in as far as the child is concerned, whether age 6 or 4 or 3. I just want to give you one example of Ismat Chugtai. I have a book on Ismat Chugtai, and the drive that took me to Ismat Chugtai was because, I read about her in Urdu and discovered that she was, as a child, when she was 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever, she used to hide under the bed, stand behind the doors to listen to old women. And there were lots of old women in her house who were in a very flowery language, scandal-mongering and gossiping. And this gossip usually used to be around the idea of sexual experience, but of course done in a very decorative and metaphorical way, because it's not open, that language is not out there. So, she's the writer who at age much later, in 1940, early 1940, writes a novel like Lihaf, a short story, like Lihaf, Quilt, wherein she's also exploring alternative sexuality, right? So the making up of her mind started at age 6 or 4 or 3, whatever, which was tabooed. It was tabooed. So what was that drive that was taking her to that language, to understand that experience, the titillating experience or whatever, of what comes into language, which is in tabooed language, which was denied to her. So was it that drive in her that made her imaginatively go through it? I'm just throwing a thought across to you. And that is why she invented what ultimately came to be known as Begumati Zuban, and opened up Urdu language for people later on to come to the subjects that Sangeeta is writing on.
We'll talk about somebody else, please. That's okay. Yes, please.
Yes. Thank you. My question is for Mrinalini ji, because my knowledge of mythology about Ram and Urmila and Lakshman is through Maithili Sharan Gupta and Tulsidas ji. That, Ram wanted Lakshman to take permission, and Lakshman was scared to ask because he was afraid she will not let him go. So where is this point of view that you presented? In what?
Sorry, Lakshman didn't talk to.
Yeah, according to Maithili Sharan Gupta and Sri Tulsidas ji, the reason for Lakshman not going to Urmila was that he was afraid she will not let him go.
Oh, no. That's very euphemistic idea. No, I don't think Lakshman was scared of that. Because in fact, Rama also was not scared of asking Sita. When Rama himself blatantly told Sita, I am going to the forest. You have a precedent, just now Rama has told Sita. And Rama was not afraid of telling Sita because he never expected Sita to say she will come or you not go. So her brother was never scared of telling his wife. Then why should he be? And he is not even in power. He's not the person who has to go there.
Excuse me, what Ramayana are we talking about? What Ramayana are we talking about? I think these are very pertinent and complex questions. There are many Ramayans. I think we need to just throw that open. You can't say, no, Rama did this. I'm sorry, I'm being a little assertive.
No,
I believe in diversities of perception. Right?
What I'm saying is, in fact, Rabindranath Tagore wrote about Urmila for the first time. Nobody had it. Valmiki did not give Urmila the place she deserved. I am talking based on the original Ramayana, the first Ramayana rather, Valmiki's Ramayana. That's what I am talking about. But later there were many Ramayanas. We have 3 Ramayanas in Telugu. So in one, Tagore, I remember very well, he made Urmila a very strong character in his poetry. And in Telugu we have a Ramayana Vishavriksham, which means, you can understand, one Ranganayakama, one of our great feminists, Marxist feminists, she calls Ramayana a poisonous tree. She has written the complete Ramayana, subverting everything and calling Rama typical bourgeois and so on and so forth. So there are many Ramayanas. I'm talking about the first text. Maybe she doesn't want me to call it the original text. Okay, but Valmiki is original as far as I am concerned, the first text. So in that text, his ideology, that's what I'm talking about.
Yes, another question here, please.
Thank you. This is addressed to all the writers. If there is one thing that you would like to see changed in your lifetime in the behavior of men, what would that one thing be? Thank you.
Well, behavior of men it's not limited to behavior of men. I think there is a lot of consent of women to that behavior of men. It's also behavior of women. I think I would shoot at patriarchy in a big way, where there is this patronizing attitude to the woman. I think it's that. I think there is a realization of autonomy that we have to really become conscious of as men and women. And to me, the creative expression has become a realization of my space, my autonomy. And it is from there that I sort of start doing my little shooting, right?
Can I respond? I would like men to become more like women. You see, we women are much more stronger than men. Clearly, very clearly. Everybody knows that. Even men know that, actually. When you see that there is a widower and a widow, you just check with them. The widower is more unhappy. He is more insecure than the widow. You can check with anybody you know. So men are more dependent on women. I don't want women, and some feminists, earlier stages, feminists used to say that smoking and drinking are more male, so we should emulate them. I think men should be the other way. Men should be emulating women because women are more sensitive, more mentally strong. They are better providers, actually. They can nurture better. So all these qualities that women have, they should be emulated by men. I would be happy to see a man cry. I mean, you have this patriarchy makes men also stereotypes. Patriarchy doesn't affect only the women, it affects the men also. They are also stereotyped because of patriarchy. So they are supposed to be the providers, they are supposed to be strong, they are not to cry. If you cry, you're like a woman. I should think men should cry. I mean, they should have that sensitivity to cry, Crying is not a bad thing, it's not a negative thing. So I would suggest that I would be very happy with a man who has more female instincts, who is as good as a woman. Thank you.
Let's see. Sangeeta, your turn.
I have
Possibly the last word because we're coming to the end of the session.
I have a completely different take on this thing. I want men to be men, and they should, spend more time on themselves other than, completely concentrating their life on torturing and dominating women. They should not, ultimately I've seen that men have a life where actually woman is the center, but they are all the way they are just trying to deny it, and that is what makes it so complicated. So they should try to be normal men, and then only it will be more fun. If their women will be women and men will be men, that will make the world very, I think, nice.
Well, enjoyable as this debate is, I think part of this idea of revolution that we are talking about, it isn't any longer about men versus women or one community being identical with another community. It's pretty clear to all of us after so many years of the so-called feminist revolution that men and women have to work together if we have to bring about any social change. And with all the work that's now happening on transgender and alternate sexuality, I think we need to take a look at the androgyny that exists within all of us. That nobody is purely male, purely female. So the notion of sexuality, the notion of a gender revolution itself has undergone a very, very significant change. I think we are now at the end of the session. May I just, the organizers, do we have time for one more question or no? No. Okay, so thank you very much for this very participative audience, and a big hand to our panelists. Thanks a lot for a very enjoyable session.